Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this information session on the road to PIPA. And today we'll be talking about data privacy and protection training and awareness, looking specifically at the options that are out there and which one may be right for you. I know a few people are filing in, so by the time I get through the introductory pieces, hopefully majority of the participants would have actually jumped on. My name is Andre Palmer. I am the Director of Strategic Client Engagement at Symptai Consulting, and I support a lot of the work that is being done on the data privacy training side. I'd love to thank the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, Alex White, and his team for inviting Symptai Consulting to be part of this campaign that supports organizations with understanding what is required of them as you prepare to become compliant with the Personal Information Protection Act. So I'll start by just telling you a little bit about who we are, Symptai Consulting, for those of you who are not familiar with us. We are a firm that was founded in 1998, and we are a leading IT security and advisory consulting organization in the region. We focus predominantly on providing risk and data management services, which includes the distribution of an AML product that supports organizations with identifying and preventing instances of fraud and money laundering instances. We also support organizations with IT governance services, business continuity planning, business process reengineering, solution selection and assessment, data privacy and protection services, payment card industry services, digital transformation and compliance, and cybersecurity services. Over the last 26 years, we have supported over 450 organizations across 25 different countries. In terms of what that looks like from a business unit perspective, we're segmented into 5 main business units. There is the data privacy and protection business unit, which we're going to be talking about today. There is the digital transformation and business process reengineering unit, says what it does or does what it says on the tin. There is the information security services, again, cybersecurity, support organizations with building cyber resilience. The financial crime management business unit, which helps organizations with identifying instances of fraud and preventing money laundering. And then finally, the risk assurance and advisory services. Today, we're going to be focusing a lot of this conversation on data privacy and protection, specifically on the training component. So let's take a look specifically at the Bermuda context, what's been happening in your world and where we are today. So for those of you who've been following the evolution of data privacy and protection within the island, you'd be familiar with the fact that the Personal Information Protection Act was passed in 2016, called PIPA or PIPA, as some of you may pronounce it. Following that, in 2019, December 13 of 2019, the island appointed its first privacy commissioner, Alex White, who has been charged with building out an office to operationalize the act and to support organizations with becoming compliant. Shortly after that, though, shortly after Alex's appointment, the world was struck by COVID-19. So not much happened for a few years, but Bermuda used the opportunity to make some amendments to the act that was originally passed in 2016. And in June of 2023, the Personal Information Protection Amendment Act was passed. Talks about the rights of data subjects. It talks about legal basis for processing. So things like consent, for example, obtaining the consent of the data subject. It talks about a contract with the data subject. It talks about the legal obligations of data controllers, meaning the organizations that are collecting, storing, processing, sharing, and deleting personal information. It talks about processing personal information in the interest of the public. It talks about legitimate business interest, the legitimate basis on which a business can process information. And then there are some other bases for processing as well. Quite a detailed act, and it really was designed to safeguard personal information. So the act isn't necessarily concerned so much about corporate information, but really it is specific to personally identifiable information for individuals. Once the Personal Information Protection Amendment Act was passed in June of 2023, organizations were given 18 months to prepare to become compliant with the Act, which becomes fully implemented on January 1, 2025. And this Act is applicable to every single organization in Bermuda. So there really is no getting around it. So if we look at where we are today, compared to where we started, we literally are 9 months to full implementation, which is good because it means that organizations still have some time to ensure that you're taking the steps necessary to become compliant with the Act. So I'd like to ask a quick question of you. Based on what I just said and based on what you may or may not know, how do you respond to this question? Do you think you have sufficient understanding of what is required of your organization under the Personal Information Protection Act? Again, the question is, do you think you have sufficient understanding of what is required of your organization under the Personal Information Protection Act? So you will see a poll on screen shortly. Click the one that applies to you. Maybe yes, we have a thorough understanding of our obligations and we're actively working to ensure compliance, or the answer may be two, somewhat basic understanding, but could benefit from further clarification or training, or no, I feel uncertain about what is required of our organization under the Personal Information Protection Act and would appreciate more guidance or resources, or 4, I'm not sure. Someone else in my organization should be responsible for privacy. So I'll give you a moment just to complete the poll, but in the interest of time, I just kind of keep going ahead, and then I will reveal the responses to the questions shortly. So knowing what you don't know, and sometimes that's kind of a great place to start, knowing what the Act requires of you, knowing all the things that I've just said in terms of the responsibilities of the data controllers, yourselves, in ensuring you protect the rights of the data subjects, the person on whom the information is about, the question then becomes, well, I am now being asked by this Act to create and implement a data privacy and protection approach that is right for my organization. But the question is, where do I begin? Again, for a lot of people that are new to data privacy, you will realize that this is not just something that is unique to Bermuda, but we're seeing the evolution of data privacy and protection all around the world. It started to gain traction with the passage of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, and then a lot of other jurisdictions have modeled data protection legislation on that piece of guidance. So if I look quickly at the responses, we're seeing 30% of respondents saying, yes, we do have a thorough understanding of our obligations. 44% saying somewhat, we have a basic understanding, but could do with more resources. 22% saying, no, I feel uncertain about what is required of our organization. And 4% saying, I'm not sure. Someone else in my organization is responsible. So based on where we are, and the fact that you are now expected to create and implement and manage a data privacy framework that is right for your organization, the starting point that we recommend and we see as global best practice for organizations looking to embark on a data privacy program really starts with data privacy training and sensitization. Ultimately, you want to understand the evolution of data privacy. What are people doing in other jurisdictions? What are the principles of a data privacy governance program? What are the building blocks of a data privacy framework or approach to the organization? And ultimately, what are some best practices that other organizations in other jurisdictions have embarked upon? And when we look at the training, the way that training is developed and administered, we see training at a number of different levels. There is first training that is designed for executives and the management of organizations, including boards of directors. because ultimately you want to be able to get the buy-in of the leadership team, who are going to be responsible for creating and facilitating a culture of compliance. So the conversation will look slightly differently at the leadership level. Beyond that, there is training that is tailored and designed for data privacy practitioners, including privacy officers. So one of the things that is unique to the Bermuda's Personal Information Protection Act is a requirement that all organizations appoint a privacy officer. So again, there are some specific things that the privacy officer will be responsible for, and there are training options that are tailored for the nominated person within this organization. In addition, there are training options for legal and compliance, for IT, HR, and marketing, which tend to be the functional areas that will call a lot on data subject professionals. Because when you think about HR, for example, HR is collecting and storing and processing a lot of personal and personally identifiable information, all the way from candidate sourcing through to employee offboarding. So again, this becomes a huge part of the focus. Same thing for IT, same thing for marketing. And when we look at examples from other jurisdictions, we're seeing that a lot of non-compliance happens at the marketing level simply because of how organizations choose to use data and the way that they interpret consent. And then finally, there is training that is designed for general staff. Also, when you think about the way that data flows through the organization, from collecting the information all the way through to deleting the information, you start to get an appreciation for the fact that there are so many individuals involved in the data lifecycle, from collecting it, from storing it, from sharing it, from processing it, and then ultimately deleting it. So ultimately, you want to be able to bring the entire staff pool into the training conversation. When you think about how training is delivered as well, there are a number of different modalities. It can be in person, it can be virtually, or it can be on an e-learning platform. But irrespective of how you choose to deliver the training, you want to ensure that the training is being delivered by qualified and certified data privacy professionals. And there are a number of certifications out there. There are a number of certifying bodies. The one that we have aligned ourselves to and will recommend is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP. This is because IAPP is the world's largest and most reputable organization as far as data privacy training is concerned. And the IAPP certifications are recognized globally as industry standard. So a lot of the trainings that we offer are IAPP trainings, and we'll be talking about 3 of those today. The CIPPE, which is the Certified Information Privacy Professional Training Course, the CIPM, which is the Certified Information Privacy Manager Training Course, and the CIPT, which is the Certified Information Privacy Technologist course. And Symptai Consulting is the only approved and accredited training partner for IAPP in this region. And we have been delivering these trainings since 2018. So we've trained hundreds of people in these particular certifications. And in addition to these, and I'll talk about that towards the end, there are some other training courses that are not certified, but are actually certified by the IAPP, but are actually applicable to general staff within your organization. I know I have been talking a lot. One of the things I should have said at the very beginning is that we encourage you to ask your questions, to make your comments in the Q&A section at the very end, at the bottom of your screen. And towards the end of this conversation, we will try to get to as many of those questions as possible. If we're not able to answer them live, we will respond in writing to you after this webinar. Okay, having done that, I will now invite Gregory Robinson, who is one of the lead trainers for the CIPP certification, to talk a little bit about that particular designation and the course content and who we generally recommend attend this particular course. Gregory, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andre, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So let's talk about the Certified Information Privacy Professional, this being the European version. So Andre would have mentioned before that, Some of these concepts are still novel to certain areas across the world. One of the things that is very good about CIPPE is that it is what I like to call the foundational course. If you look on screen, you'll see that Module 1 speaks about data protection laws, but I actually think this is that's a little short-winded. It gives a very detailed background actually as to just how far back data privacy was actually conceptualized, talking about human rights and the basic right to privacy. And I think that when you take this course, it actually opens your eyes to realize that this is not just coming out of nowhere. This is really a massive, massive undertaking that has been in the works for quite a few years now. I also say it's foundational because you'll see 11 modules on the screen, but you'll notice that module 5 says data subject rights. Now, when we talk about data subjects, we're talking about the persons, about whom personal data relates, right? So everyone on this call right now is a data subject, myself included, okay? And what you'll find is that when you understand data subject rights, everything else gets pieced together. So when we talk about data subject rights, we're speaking about things like access, rectifying errors with the data. So for example, if data is now outdated, you can have that addressed. Understanding, getting it removed if you want it to be removed, understanding, when you have a right to object, or if you want to perhaps restrict information being used, how you provide consent, talking about automated decision-making, because that can be, a basis for profiling, which is not always fair to a data subject, and even how your data can be shared from entity to entity. Now, looking at data subject rights, this actually corresponds with part 3 of PIPA. Okay, and once you understand what the data subject rights are, it allows everything else on screen to fall into place. And my colleagues will speak further on this as well. So you get a thorough understanding of what personal data is and why that would be important to a data subject. Once you understand that, now you proceed to go to the controllers and the processors. So understanding how your entity as a data controller needs to work with the processors, those are the third parties behind the scenes serving you and the data subjects, understanding the roles and responsibilities that align to come together. And again, because there are so many similarities from legislation that have been predicated or taking guidance from GDPR, this will help you to get the core principles into your understanding as well as your organization's understanding. PIPA is no exception, and PIPA is, as Andre mentioned, very, very thorough in covering the bases that needs to be covered to make sure that your business goals can align with your privacy goals. They're supposed to go hand in hand. It will then go on to speak a bit about, understanding the jurisdictional implications when you're sending data, considerations you want to make in terms of how you're going to protect that data, as well as how you then proceed to understand, the legal framework. So, what potential sanctions can be, how data subjects can go about requesting either access to their data or, there's processing elements to happen to their data. So tying it all up, CIPP is where I'd recommend as a starting point. You will find that, yes, because of the legal background of it, a lot of lawyers might start here, but it's not limited to lawyers at all. You'll actually find that privacy officers, legal and compliance officers, information managers, and security managers will also want to take an active role in these trainings so that they can have and utilize that thorough foundation to make sure that in each step and area of your process, of your program, of your organization, you have the principles down pat to make sure that you are thoroughly aligned with PIPA and any other jurisdiction that you're serving using, data subjects information. So with that, I'll hand back over to Andre.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gregory. And that's the Certified Information Privacy Professional course. A lot of it too will look at the general data protection regulations and other international regulations and legislations that will influence ultimately how PIPA is interpreted and operationalized in Bermuda. So it is, as Gregory said, a really great starting point in terms of understanding the law and understanding what the framers had in mind when they created the Bermuda Personal Information Protection Act. Another designation that we offer and we see as very popular is the Certified Information Privacy Manager training course. And to talk about that one is Daniel Monroe, who is one of the lead trainers for the CIPM designation. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Andre. All right, great. Welcome again, everyone. And for the CIPM, Certified Information Privacy Manager, how this one differs from the CIPPE and what you learn about CIPT next is that this focuses more on the operations of a privacy office within your organization, or even if you don't develop a privacy office specifically, but a data privacy and protection program in your organization. Because a lot of misconception around the law itself is that this is a compliance type of regulation that comes into place. And as Gregory pointed out, as Andre mentioned, with the various types of training by departments and so on, this is not just compliance. This affects almost everything in your organization: legal, marketing, HR, customer service, because there are rights that are involved that you have to facilitate. There are standards now in play that are requirements for you as an organization. And fulfilling these kinds of activities for privacy and for protection will help organizations reap some benefits as well, develop your competitive advantage and such. And what that looks like from a privacy program perspective is that you will start to identify, you can use a program, the course, CIPM course, to learn how do you identify the areas that need attention, that need improvement for the data privacy and protection program. How do you design this program coming out of that identification and understanding? And how do you implement it and monitor it for its performance and improvement? And so this course has 10 modules, as you can see on the screen here. And we do an introduction into the privacy program management, about what it means, what it looks like, how it affects each department, concerns these departments may have, what is privacy governance, what that looks like, how do you develop that internal structure that ensures that your efforts, your spending into this new thing actually reaps some benefits, that there's oversight and direction from cross-functional teams or executive teams and so on. This course also touches on the GDPR in a much less, a smaller capacity, of course, because the CIPPE is there, but it does look at the laws around the world, that the evolution of privacy, basically. GDPR, it does touch on a little bit of Brazil and so on. But what we will do is, of course, to ensure that it's related or relatable to you, is that we could include a couple of slides to ensure that there are some PIPA comparisons with the other laws and can see the difference and how applicable certain things are. Data subject rights as well. Gregory spoke about the data subject rights just now, but how do we facilitate these rights? What kind of systems do we need to put in place? For example, consent. What does this consent mean? How do we facilitate it? What things do we need to put in place to be able to notify persons about their rights, be able to capture information from them regarding their consent or other rights? How do we keep a track and report on these things if asked by the regulator or even by the customer or employees? And what happens if they choose to exercise their right to, say, withdraw their consent or request information about the data that you have on them and so on? So the course looks at these kinds of practical things throughout it, looking at training. How do you ensure that your staff is brought up to speed on data privacy and protection? What are the things that you need to do? What kind of resources inside your organization can you leverage to help you to do this? Because as you can imagine, we may not be training professionals inside our organization. So what do we leverage to help us to do these things? And of course, we're not all privacy experts or security experts. So what kind of protection, what does protection mean? What does it look like? How do I protect this personal information that we are now or have been using? And so the module can get into some detail to help us to understand all these different concepts and how we can leverage them, how we can identify what's needed in the organization and get those things improved or implemented. Some things to note, how this course is set up is a little different from the others. This one has a case study that is set up from module 1, and in each module it's developed and expanded on. And so there's some something that you can then apply the learning from each module to be able to say, okay, there's this kind of scenario involved. How do we apply these concepts to it? What are the things that we need to do to be able to facilitate this kind of scenario or address the issues identified in that kind of scenario? And another thing to note, one of the things that's really appreciated about CIPM from my perspective is that this course is updated frequently, at least once a year. I would say 2 times a year, because as we all know, technology changes rapidly, always, right? There's something new happening all the time. And so one of the things I appreciate is that this course gets updated by IAPP to the point that right now the latest update has additional information around AI. IAPP also releases frequent information that supports learning about these things as well. And so the course is very up to date and will help keep track of and how to handle these modern things that we're facing and how that affects data privacy and protection. But who should be taking part in this? And just like before, it's not just the persons in IT or information security or legal or even the privacy office itself or the privacy manager. Several persons from various departments can take part in this to learn about data privacy and protection, because I said it affects almost every department in your organization. And they may be called upon to work in some capacity in your privacy operation, your privacy program for your company. Your DPO or who may be designated as your DPO could greatly benefit from this privacy manager. As I mentioned, IT, IS managers, of course, your auditors who may be looking at your privacy program, your policies, procedures within your organization, understanding privacy and what that means will be exceptional for them. Legal and compliance officers, of course, because there are still some compliance activities involved. There are civil matters and other legal repercussions and requirements that they need to understand as well, and what's being implemented in the company, how that can be facilitated in the company, and so they can be more effective with this law. Marketing professionals, of course, you interact with people every day to be able to push your company out there. Human resources, of course, you hire persons frequently, and persons send in information wanting to be hired and they may never get the job, and you have information on these persons. And so HR is a wealth of data, personal data, that needs to be protected as well. And anybody else involved in the process in your program, right? Executives and so on. And so it's a very versatile program and looks to help your organization to operationalize what it is that we're seeing in these laws. And with that, I'll hand back over to Andre.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Daniel. A really versatile and informative course. In fact, this is the most popular designation for a lot of people because of the versatility. So yes, as you can see on the screen in terms of who should attend, while these are the people we generally see attending the CIPM, it's not limited to only the list on the screen. Thanks, Daniel. So next we are going to be talking about the CIPT, the Certified Information Privacy Technologist training course. And that is, as the name suggests, talks a little bit about the technology that supports the privacy program. And to speak about that is David Wright, one of the lead trainers for this particular designation.
Thank you, Andre, and good afternoon, everyone. You can have security without privacy, but you can't have privacy without security. And this quote summarizes the misconception that traditional information security knowledge, experience, and practices are sufficient to address privacy concerns. If we were to think back to when we did math in elementary school or high school, and some of these lessons which we no longer use, we may recall set theory where we were to draw Venn diagrams. And if we were to draw a Venn diagram representing privacy and security, we would see that there is in fact an intersection or what we would have called a union, to use the correct terminology. And we would see that security addresses the triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. And all of this actually falls within the domain of privacy, while privacy actually incorporates much more, and security does not. And I'll touch on the nuances over the next few minutes. So if we were to go further and investigate the privacy breaches that have resulted in significant fines for Google, Microsoft, Facebook, as well as some others, the majority of them had little to do with the robustness of their information security. And that is not to ignore the fact that the fragility of the information security has in fact resulted in significant privacy breaches. So earlier, Gregory would have spoken about the Certified Information Privacy Professional, CIPP, which answers the question of why we must focus on privacy, and that is the law. Daniel spoke about the Certified Information Privacy Manager, which answers the question of what must we do to respond to this law in terms of how we design and implement and operate our privacy program. So I'll now speak briefly about the Certified Information Privacy Technologist, or CIPT, which answers the question of how to protect the data that is captured or collected, stored, processed, and transferred using technology. Now, the CIPT certification, it's in its 10th year, and this has led to it being the most respected and globally recognized privacy technology certification. So the CIPT course bridges the gap between data privacy and data protection. The course starts out with what could be considered an introduction to privacy for technology personnel in Module 1, and it covers topics such as well-established privacy models by persons such as Alan Westin, Nissenbaum, Daniel Salov, and Ryan Kalo, as well as privacy principles and standards such as the Fair Information Practice Principles, or FIPS, the Generally Accepted Privacy Principles, or GAP, and the OECD guidelines, which the GDPR and a number of other privacy laws and regulations have been based on. And then it continues into Module 2, which covers the somewhat conflicting objectives among system designers, system users, and privacy professionals related to concepts such as usability or utility and user experience of systems. And it introduces us to factors and considerations for privacy notices, privacy settings, and privacy dashboards of various websites and applications. Module 3 then covers various defects, faults, and errors, as well as failures throughout the data lifecycle, which can result in various privacy harms to the data subject. And it introduces some design strategies to avoid or to minimize those harms. The module is useful for identifying and addressing risks in a data protection impact assessment, which is basically an assessment of high risks to the data subject. And it also begins to identify how to respond to some of those risks. Module 4 then expands on this with some specific privacy enhancing technologies, or what we call PETs. And these include anonymization, pseudonymization, and encryption, as well as some other fundamental information security principles. Now, when we review PIPA, we notice that Part 2, Sections 5 to 16, identifies 12 key principles and rules, and the 9th of which addresses security safeguards. And interestingly enough, it specifically singles out encryption, for which there are 2 different states of data where encryption is critical. The first of which is when it's at rest, which is when it is being stored, as well as in motion, which is when it is being transferred. And there are two different types of encryption, being symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. And I can tell you that if you were to study encryption as a cybersecurity topic, it can actually make your head hurt. But each type of encryption has its own appropriate place, although there are numerous algorithms for each type. Now, guidance on the website of the Privacy Commissioner provides 4 considerations for encryption. The first of which is choosing the right algorithm. The second is choosing the right key size. The third is choosing the right software. And the fourth is keeping the key secure. And Module 4 covers this in great detail and makes it simple for even a layman. Now, while Module 3 and 4 may appear more relevant for responding to some existing risks, Modules 5 and 6 provide a more proactive approach of privacy engineering and privacy by design, respectively. The latter, being privacy by design, is geared towards embedding privacy into the procedures and the technological solutions throughout the design, the development, and the deployment, rather than, as it typically is, an afterthought that may not fit very well because it was a bolt-on. And then Module 7 ties it all up nicely as it covers some specific challenges of monitoring, tracking, surveillance, and interference as it relates to some of the established technologies, including what I refer to as the SMAC stack or SMAC, that's social media, mobile computing, analytics, and cloud. And it also addresses some emerging technologies such as the Internet of Things or IoT, as well as artificial intelligence or AI, as well as a number of others. So as with some of the previous courses, there are no required prerequisites, although I must highlight that the CIPT is quite technical. So as a result, some technical experience, training, or previous certification is recommended, but not absolutely required. And that being said, who should attend? Well, anybody involved in the privacy program could and should do the CIPT, but it's geared more towards data protection officers or data protection managers, especially those who already have a technical background or want to deepen their technical knowledge and understanding. Privacy managers, chief information officers, chief information security officers, or any other title that falls within those 2 categories. So information and security managers, application developers, and I'll highlight this one and say that if there's anybody who definitely should do the CIPT, it's application developers. Reason being, system administrators and anybody else involved in systems management would very likely have some built-in tools that would allow privacy and security, including, privacy settings, security settings, including encryption. But applications that are developed in-house have to have privacy built into the design and the development and the coding to ensure that not just the functionality that the designers want to bring out, but that the privacy practices are built into those applications as well. So with that being said, I will now hand back over to Andre.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David, for walking us through the Certified Information Privacy Technologist designation. And with that, you begin to see how the 3 certifications together form a really robust understanding of how to create, implement, and manage a data privacy program within your organization. But those are the certified courses offered through the International Association of Privacy Professionals. In addition to that, though, you may also want to consider, as an organization, general sensitization, privacy training, and privacy training options for your entire organization. Because while these 3 designations will always give international best practices, you still want to ensure that you're creating a training solution that is tailored to the specific legislation within your jurisdiction. So PIPA. One of the things, I guess maybe one of the limitations of of these three designations is that it does not necessarily talk about PIPA, but of course it will give you the tools to help you to interpret and implement a privacy program in response to PIPA. But what the general data privacy sensitization sessions do is that these will go into a little bit more detail about the about PIPA. And these, again, like I said at the beginning, they are designed for the leadership within the organizations, and that could be a 60 to 90-minute sensitization session, or for the entire staff, which tends to be a little longer. That could be up to 3 hours. And in terms of the content that is covered, we generally look at an introduction to data privacy, just to give you an overview of the evolution of data privacy. Then we will spend some time looking in detail at the Personal Information Protection Act. What does the Act says in detail? It will touch on things such as the rights of data subjects, so things like the right to be informed as a data subject, the right to access, what does that mean? The right to rectification, right to erasure, right to object or to opt out, right to data portability, and the right not to be subjected to automated decision making. And then we will also look at how, as a data controller, you must respond to these rights. So the responsibilities of data controllers. And then we will also look at some best practices. And we will do that for both the general staff as well as the leadership within the organization. Also, these trainings can either be delivered in person or virtually. If they're being delivered virtually, it will be with a live instructor who will be able to respond to your questions in real time as well. In addition to those sensitization sessions, there is also a digital on-demand short course, which breaks down PIPA into bite-sized chunks and presents this as a learning option that can actually be consumed by all members across the organization over a period of, say, 30 to 60 days. So module 1 of the e-learning course looks at an introduction to PIPA and data protection principles in general. Module 2 talks about roles and responsibilities, both from the data controllers and the data processors, as well as the data practitioners within the organization. Module 3 looks at data collection, consent, and security. And David spoke at length about that a little bit ago. Module 4 looks at data subjects' rights, transfer considerations, cross-border transfers, and PIAs, which is privacy impact assessments. And then finally, module 5 will look at record keeping and enforcement. We will end in module 6 with a quiz, just to ensure that participants have been paying attention while you go through this e-learning course. We know how e-learning courses can be. So there is a final quiz at the end, and then some practical scenarios, some best practices, if you will, which obviously just help to solidify that participants have in fact learned and understood the content. So based on what we've said, now again, while these are only some training options that are available, we're not by any means saying that you have to necessarily do one of these, whether you're doing a training through Symptai Consulting and the International Association of Privacy Professionals or through some other provider, we do recommend at a very basic starting point that some training be pursued. So another poll question for you: have you been exposed to any formal training in data privacy and protection, irrespective of how long ago that was? And again, some responses: yes, I have received formal training. No, I have not. Or C, I have some previous knowledge of privacy, but I would love to be certified. So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to complete that, and then I will share the responses. So while you're completing that, just a couple of final slides to end on. So while training is the starting point, there are a number of other things that we support organizations with as far as building out, implementing, and operating a privacy framework for their organization is concerned. And we'll generally start with some form of assessment. It could be a baseline assessment to assess how ready you are from a compliance perspective for the Act. Then we may look at the maturity assessment. If you have a program in place or parts of a program in place, what is the maturity level of that program and where are the gaps? We also do third-party compliance audits because, again, we're seeing that so many violations happen, not necessarily because of the data controller, but the data processor to whom the certain processing activities have been outsourced. Then there are privacy audits, privacy impact assessments, and so on. Beyond that too, we also support organizations with governance and strategy development. So developing a governance model that may be right for your organization, developing a privacy strategy based on the nature of operations. And the governance development piece will include things like policies and procedures, privacy notices, ROPA, which is the record of processing activities, RACI charts, standards, and so on. And then the third pillar of support is really around DPO as a service, data protection officer as a service, helping you to register with the regulator within Bermuda, providing legal opinion and guidance around some of your processing activities, reviewing your data controller registration particulars, responding to requests from data subjects, and so on. And just one final slide before I respond to a couple of questions. We will be offering certified training courses in Bermuda, in Hamilton, in the month of April. So there is the Certified Information Privacy Professional Training course, which will be on April 15 and 16. That's over 2 days, starting at 9 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m. each day. So really involved. But participants will have up to 12 months to complete the exam once you have registered for the course. And then in that same week, we'll be also offering the Certified Information Privacy Manager training course, also a 2-day training event happening on April 18 and 19, starting also at 9 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m. on both days. And there's a whole bunch of resources that will be made available to you to support both your learning during those actual 2 days, as well as the exam preparation process once you have completed the training course. If you do have questions, you can reach out to us at training@symptai.com. That's training, training @symptai.com, or check out our website, which is symptai.com. So thank you so much for but thank you so much for participating, for being with us. There are a couple of questions that came in the chat. So I will invite the panelists just to jump back on while we respond to these quickly. And if you do have any questions or comments, again, please feel free to share these in the Q&A section. So one question came in, which is, do these designations result in letters that can be added to your name? For example, John Smith, CIPPE or CIPM? And the answer is yes. So when you look on LinkedIn, for example, you will see a number of privacy practitioners or privacy professionals who will add a specific designation to their name. Like, they will do an MBA, for example, to denote or to signal to the world that they have attained some level of formal training from a recognized global certifying body in data privacy. So yes, the answer is yes, you can add the designation to your name once you have successfully completed the exam. And then this is also a membership body. So to maintain your membership, there are specific activities that must be completed throughout the year in order to maintain membership. I hope that answered your question. There is another question from Norma, and I may ask David just to respond to this one. The question is, what is recommended for sole operators? What do we need to put in place to be compliant?
All right, so thanks, Andre. So the first thing I'd say is an understanding and appreciation for what the Act requires. There are a number of things that have to be put in place in terms of, and I would have touched on abiding by the various security principles, but it also means that documentation has to be put in place in terms of making a record of what it is that you have on hand in terms of data that you have for data subjects, so that you can respond to them as relates to responding to their rights of access to their data, as well as rectification of their data, as well as the number of the other rights. So I just touched on it there, but essentially the important thing is to have an understanding of what the law requires. I've only scratched the surface, but it's important to understand what the law requires and ensure that you put things in place. If you're a sole trader, my one advice I would give you is that don't do it on your own, but seek assistance. This is something that Symptai does, but I could also say you could also reach out to a lawyer to provide guidance for some of the steps that you can take to ensure that you're compliant.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And I hope that answered the question. Another question, are there test centers in Bermuda to complete the exam? The answer to that question is I do not know, but I will find out and we can respond. But generally what the IAPP does, so the IAPP exams are not necessarily administered by us for obvious reasons, just to keep the certification process and the exam taking process completely independent. So what the IAPP does will partner with exam centers within each local jurisdiction, and then those are made available through the IAPP portal at the point at which you register to take the exam. So my immediate response is I'm not entirely sure of where the exam centers are in Bermuda, but that is something that we can easily find out, and we will share that with you. So I don't know if one of the panelists can just quickly find that out while we are on here, since we have 8 minutes left. Paul is asking, are the exams online based or in person? If in person, what locations are available? The second part of your question, Paul, is what we're trying to figure out, and we will respond either shortly while we're on this in the session or in writing afterwards. But to the first part of your question, the exams are offered online as well. So as an attendee, you can choose to do the exam online, or you can choose to do the exam in person if it is offered physically in your location. If it is going to be online, there are a number of things that you will have to do through Pearson VUE, through their virtual environment. And I know perhaps for Gregory, for example, who would have done, I can't remember if you did one online. You may want to talk about what the online process will look like or looks like. You're on mute, Gregory.
I realize. Sorry about that. So I actually did not sit the exam online. I did it at a testing center. However, I can quickly explain what the process is kind of like in terms of making that selection. So as Andre pointed out, when you have registered for the course and exam on a whole, when you are trying to select your exam date, it will direct you to Pearson VUE, and you will then be able to enter different locations to see what is available nearest you or most conveniently to you. It will also give you the option of choosing to do it online. Now, the upside is they also have an instructional video that gives you a feel of what you would have to do if you go to an exam center, and also what you'd have to do if you were to do it online. So if you sort of, for instance, pointed that, you'd need 2 forms of identification, you will have to go through certain processes just to make sure everything is up to code in terms of, sitting the exam in your environment, be it in person or on camera. So if you're online on camera, you probably have to show a few things, make sure it lines up. So there are steps to be taken, and there are instructional videos, and they make it pretty clear, but certainly any guidance that we can provide, then we would certainly look to do that.
So I just wanted to follow on and answer the question. So I just did a quick search, and one Pearson VUE center is on the island, which is at Bermuda College. So that is an option for you to do the exam in person. I just want to share also, I've not done any of the IAP exams online, but I have done other certification exams online. And what I can say is that the exam experience in person requires more time because you have to go to the center. However, you transfer the liability or the risks over to the exam center, in the sense that if you are doing it at home or the office, you have to ensure that your power supply as well as your internet supply, there's no issue with it. Gregory would have mentioned that there are some other things in terms of if you're doing it at home or any other space, they would want to see the entire space. So you'd have to take your laptop, move it in a 360-degree plane so that they can see everything around. You have to ensure that there are no sounds or any persons in your background, because there are a number of other factors that could make affect the integrity of the exam. And as a result, there's a little more pressure on you to do it online. So from my personal experience, as well as others who have done other exams online, there is a general preference to do it at a center, but the choice is yours, of course. And as I said, the online option provides you with convenience, but there's a little more stress associated with it.
Great. Thanks, Gregory and David, for responding to that. So the answer is yes, you can actually do it at a physical location in Bermuda College, or you can opt to do this online, of course, understanding some of the limitations and liabilities that may be present with the online option as well. Another question, does this cost, so the cost of both certification or each certification is $2,250. The question is, does this cost include the exam fee? The answer is yes. So this is an all-inclusive cost. It includes all the course materials. It includes registration with the IAPP. It includes access to the IAPP portal, where there are tons of other resources that you will benefit from, including exam preparation resources. It includes costs for tea, lunch, and coffee break for 2 days as well. And it also includes the cost of the exam. So once you pay this cost, there is no additional fee that is involved for anything that is related to the course. As I mentioned before, you will have up to 12 months to take the exam from the date of sitting the actual course itself. And during that time, all our trainers will be available and on hand to support you as you prepare for your exam. Now, like I said at the beginning, we've trained hundreds of people in various certifications, whether it is the CIPPE, CIPM, or the CIPT, and we continue to provide support for the participants long after the course has ended, which is also one of the benefits of doing it through a registered provider or partner of the International Association of Private Professionals. So yes, it is an all-inclusive cost, and everything is included. Like I said, if you want more information, or if there are questions that you have that you did not get an opportunity to ask during this session, feel free to reach out to us at training@symptai.com, or visit our website, which is www.symptai.com. I am conscious that we are just 2 minutes to go. Another question, how long does the certification last? David, Daniel, I don't know if one of you want to take that one.
Yeah, I can respond. I can say with certainty that it's at least 2 years, and it can be renewed once you provide what are called CPs, which is continued professional education. Essentially, there are some opportunities to do webinars, as well as a number of other courses from IAP, courses, webinars, reading, whether from IAP as well as some other bodies that are approved. And you can submit your proof of doing these webinars and other courses and other research that would then allow you to renew your certification for another 2 to 3 years.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Okay, great. So this brings us to the end of today's information session. Again, thank you so much to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner in Bermuda for inviting us, Symptai Consulting, to be part of the Road to PIPA campaign. We do hope that you found this session useful. Thank you so much again to Angie, to Lucy, to all the team at the office. Thank you to the trainers, the panelists, for joining me, Gregory, David, and Daniel. As you can see, quite knowledgeable. Thank you too to the team that supported us in the background with all of the marketing components, DeAndre and Camille. Good luck, happy hunting. Again, if you do have questions or comments, reach out to us at training@symptai.com or visit our website for more information. All the best and enjoy the rest of your day.